Welcome back to part 2 of this teacher career transition story. So if you haven't listened to part 1, head back to our channel and check that out before listening in because we're kicking off right where we left off. If you've already listened to part 1, then let's dive in. I'm Lisa Harding, ex-EdTech CEO turned certified teacher career coach. It wasn't all that long ago that I was recruiting, interviewing, and hiring teachers for roles in corporate America. Teachers that ended up being some of my all-time best employees. Fast forward through my own career transition, where I left my role as CEO to become a stay-at-home mom, I now work with and empower teachers to transform their lives by turning their once distant career dreams into realities. In this podcast, I give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're a burnt-out teacher or simply need a change and you're looking to create a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started.
One of the things that I liked about the company is that they did not have a ridiculous interview process. So I know Sheila had asked about, what did you have to do? The first interview was just a phone screen. It's like 45 minutes. And it's because it's federal contracting, there are certain non-negotiables. And one of those non-negotiables is that I have to live in the DMV. And so they had, the vaccination status question, the DMV, you cannot move. I cannot work internationally. So they have our computers locked down. So if we were to travel, we can't also be working. It has to be in the United States because some of our contracts require that. But one of the things was they did not have this extended process. And so once I passed the interview phone screen, they came back and they said, we have 2 tasks. And one of it was backwards mapping. Easy. Hey, you have this training on June, whatever, describe the process of what you would do. And now looking back, of course, my answer was totally stupid because I didn't really know some of the roles in the company. So I was involving people that would have no business in planning for this event because it is a little bit of event planning as well. I'm ordering catering and doing some of those things when we have our in-person sessions. And then they gave me a set of slides and said, how would you make this better? And they said, in the instructions for both tasks, we do not want you to spend more than 1 hour. So whatever you can get done, you turn it around in 48 hours. And then when I had my second interview, they went over the answers and then we had like a role play. Like, how would you talk about this topic? So mostly I do not do the facilitation, but I prep the facilitators. I do help with some of the materials creations. I also curate additional resources. So I give our facilitators starter slides. So we have some standard slides that I've put in there, things like what are the expectations or norms? What is the learning outcome or objective for the day? What are some of the follow-up questions that we would have like in an activity or the debrief? I create the evaluation. That's always the same thing. So they don't have to do a lot to really come up with 15 minutes of content. It's more me shepherding them through the process. And then while they're doing the facilitation live, I'm doing the recording piece. I'm monitoring the chat. I'm, working on breakout rooms, all of those things. And it's amazing. But those of you who are introverts or you're just tired, knowledge management might be a really good place for you to look into because there isn't as much interaction as there might be with a traditional learning and development role where you might be expected to do the facilitation.
Great. And you answered some of the questions that came in about the demonstration of the project. Thanks, Sheila, for that. Ayana asked about where you get all your materials. It sounds like you create some. Do you create all of the materials or do the SMEs sometimes create things as well?
It is both. It depends on if I have a lazy SME who got the, nose goes, you're up for this Friday. Or I have some people that are better about doing all of the content themselves. And then I kind of have that hands off. It's a matter of knowing your facilitator. I did not have to have any instructional design piece, the regular teacher tired doing all of those things. I had 3 preps. So I was constantly making things in Google Slides. Of course, we use PowerPoint. And then I have a Canva business account too that I can create slides. So that's like one of the participant guides I made that way. We also have an add-on for PowerPoint called Efficient Elements that saves a bunch of time. It helps you like line up all the stuff correctly. It gives you lots of starter things like, shapes and diagrams. And so I use that quite often.
So did you have a portfolio? This kind of goes into Natasha's question. Did you have a portfolio that you shared, or was it more the project they gave you?
So I did have a little portfolio. It's something that I made in Canva. And if you go to LinkedIn, you'll see it because I have it linked to you. And one of my pro tips, of course, now that I know better, I had Canva for educators because it gives you all the good graphics. And then I lost access to that when I left the school system. And so I can't make any changes to the portfolio. I would have to start over. But my portfolio was more, as a Spanish teacher, I think people are like, well, we don't need Spanish here, so why would we consider you? And it's like, okay, well, yes, I have skills in both languages. I can still do a PowerPoint and all of that. So anything that I had created that was like for a newsletter or my department, I put that in the portfolio as well so they could see different types of things. There's an article that was in the newspaper, so I linked to that so that they could get to see a little bit more about me. I think it's only like 8 pages, the portfolio. Google is pretty comparable. So yeah, you would be fine, Amy, if you can do Canva and Google Slides.
And earlier you had mentioned in your role, you do a lot with SharePoint. Had you had prior experience with SharePoint, or was that a new skill you learned kind of on the job?
So not as much with SharePoint. Our district used it only at central office, and we were a Google school. So everything was done in Google, but I managed a drive of like 30 people across the school system, just people that I connected with that we shared materials. And so I already had expertise in, who is a viewer, who's an editor, who can comment, like setting different privileges, the sharing settings, the folder system, organization, all of that. But they did purchase a Udemy business plan. And so I had one of the licenses. So of course I took lots of classes too during company time. And one of those was SharePoint. We have one person who does technology. And basically like 2 weeks after I got hired, I had privileges to be doing stuff on SharePoint, even though I didn't know exactly some of the things that I needed to do. I will sometimes reach out and be like, help, I have ghosts on my computer. And sometimes it's like, where did this document go? I put it up here. I can see it. I refresh the page. It's not there, and then he can fix it for me. But
so we meant you use SharePoint. You mentioned Canva. And one of the questions I like to ask, and then Danielle was kind of echoing this, what other programs or skills did you need or do you need in this role? And were there any that you tried to upskill before getting the job?
Yeah, I do a lot with Excel, which is my nemesis. I really like Google Sheets better. And I've taken lots of trainings on Excel. I use that mostly for data analysis. So every time we have a session, I get things like the number of participants, and then we're tracking that. Because we don't have a learning management system and everything comes down to, are we seeing a return on investment on the trainings that we're providing? That kind of stuff is hard for me to measure because everything is voluntary. The survey at the end, the evaluation is voluntary. I can't tell who's accessing the resources on SharePoint because it's open. I can see the number of views, but it doesn't tell me, who's in the resources, what they're doing them for. I've also used YouTube a lot. Either it's something that I'm looking up or it's something I'm looking up for somebody else. And I use LinkedIn quite a bit. So that's that knowledge management piece. If someone gets assigned a new project, maybe it's something about supply chain. Since COVID, this has been a pretty big industry, and people might not have any supply chain background, but now they're consulting on a project. And so they need to get smart quickly. So one of the things I've been doing is building a library of resources so that all of the types of projects that we do often for the federal government, they have resources available so they can have like a 1-page or 2-page synopsis of, what is supply chain or what are the issues. And LinkedIn is great for that because it has industry articles, it has infographics. I'm in a million different groups. I follow a bunch of hashtags for work, and I curate my feed through LinkedIn so that the things that are important to me or relevant to the job come to me and I'm not spending as much time searching for them.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. I wanted to talk briefly kind of about some of the other things on this slide now. And, if you've been to my sessions before, maybe you've come to my master class, I really just talk about the process and doing things in kind of a certain order. And one of those things is before you even worry about upskilling or working on your resume, really identifying which career path is right for you so you can have laser focus. And one really great thing, once you kind of know, and you can even have it down to 2 if they're similar, but you really want to have laser focus so that you can tailor your resume, your cover letter, your story, your portfolio, your language to that particular job. But once you narrow it down, the other thing to do is, even if they are in-person jobs in states that you don't live in, that doesn't matter. Go look at as many job postings for that job as you possibly can and start writing down the common themes that you see, or copy and paste all of those into a file, into a word cloud, and you can see what the common words are that are going to pop up, what skills you need. Or paste 3 or 4 into ChatGPT and say, what are the common skills that I need from these job descriptions? And that will really help you as well. As far as your resume and cover letter, Taryn, did you customize it for this particular job? Were you applying to other jobs at the same time? And maybe kind of tell us how you approached it.
Yeah, so I have that in my document that kind of outlines that the 5 months that I spent looking, but this was my only official interview, and then I accepted the job. So I wasn't the spray and pray. I didn't send out 500 applications. I was very deliberate in the roles that I was looking at because I have a diverse background with college and middle school and high school, advanced placement with textbook publishing. So there were lots of areas of interest. And as I read more about certain jobs, it was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. Like, I have a PhD in curriculum and instruction. And then when I looked at some of the curriculum jobs, it's like, oh, I don't like that. I mean, I can do it, but I don't want to do that all day. That's why I'm trying to get out of teaching. I want to do something different. And so, ChatGPT was not a thing for me when I was job searching, but that to me is the best sort of education. Like Lisa said, you pull several different jobs under different job titles and see, like, where's the overlap? Do I have those skills currently? And is this a deal breaker? So there are things like, I didn't have the SharePoint expertise that somebody else might have coming into knowledge management, but they never had anybody who had the job before. So it wasn't, it was a great time for me to sort of rewrite what I wanted to do. And I think some of the things, like teachers say, well, I'm not sure all I ever wanted to do was teach. That was not me. I ended up teaching to pay for graduate school. So when I finished with graduate school, it was like, oh, this isn't so bad. I could do this. And then I went back and got certified. And I think there's some reframing that might be helpful if you say, it isn't the only job you ever wanted to do. It's the job that you learned about that you said, yes, please, and signed up for. And now it's your turn to step back and say, well, what other jobs weren't available 20 years ago when I started, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or whenever it was. Teaching is not a life sentence. You can get out at any time. I know people are very scared to do that, but it's been really great just to do something different.
It's funny you use that term because so both of my parents were educators. My mom, and this was way back before it was, big thing, 40 years ago, she was a career changing educator, but my dad uses that term life sentence. He taught for 36 years in middle school, which I was laughing at your comment earlier. You won't believe this. Same classroom, the same exact school, same classroom, same subject, 36 years. Honestly, I don't know how he did that, but I digress. There was a great question from Danielle, and I'll kind of share my perspective of what I've seen, and then I'll toss it over to you, Taryn. But Danielle says, I've seen a lot of ID, which is instructional design positions, that want you to have some experience. How do you get around this when applying? And is there a stepping stone position to get some experience? So teachers that I have worked with, a lot of them are saying that the companies are accepting their teaching experience as instructional design experience, but they are also coupling it with some courseware on adult learning theory. And so they are showing that, hey, look, I know how to do the IB, and I've now shifted, and I have taken XYZ course on adult learning theory, so I can easily put it together, and I have the experience. Taryn, what are your thoughts on that? Do you have a different perspective?
Yeah, I think in my case, again, this is something recent. Now that I have more free time because I have my nights and weekends back, I reached out to one of my cat's rescue organizations. They were looking for volunteers. And what I'm doing right now during my time off is creating content for their Facebook page. And so I'm using Google Slides. I would be using Canva, otherwise, to help these animals get adopted. And so every piece of content is different, and I have like a spreadsheet that I drafted, and I'm getting different skills than I would normally use in my day job that I would certainly put on LinkedIn as an experience for volunteering. And I know when you're a teacher tired, you're like, I don't want to volunteer. I don't even want to cook dinner. But there might be some.
I still don't want to cook dinner. Actually, I don't want to pack lunches. I hate packing lunches for my kids. I don't know what it is about that. Yeah. So internships, you could look for internships, volunteer opportunities. I think those are great things. And even just like if you have a neighbor that has a business, or like, like Taryn said earlier, just every person you talk to, ask them what they do for work, connect with them on LinkedIn. And especially if it's a business owner, like, hey, do you have any, could I do some help? A lot of people want part-time help at their company, but they can't find quality people to hire to do, small projects. But teachers that are looking to change, especially over the summer, it's such a great fit. And there might not be a posted position, but they might say, or if it's a manager, oh my gosh, yes, I'm really behind on XYZ. I can pay you by the hour for 2 months or something. So again, kind of networking and all of that. Now we're moving on to the last section, Taryn, and you already did a great job kind of telling us about the interview process. My favorite part of coaching, and I don't know if this should be my favorite part, is I love helping teachers negotiate their salary. Once it comes in, I'm like, nope, we're going to get you more. I want to get you more. And teachers aren't used to a world where that is even a thing. So we have a negotiation prep workshop, and then I actually work with people. I'm like, just message me directly when you get your offer, and I'll pump you up and get you through this. But were you in a position, if it's a government agency, it might kind of be like teaching where there's not that window of opportunity, but was this a thing for you?
So yes and no. Again, because I have a PhD, I was making about $98,000 in Maryland as a teacher. And that was after having frozen salaries for a while. And when I was looking at jobs, because I hear all the time, I can't take a pay cut. I want something equivalent to what I'm making now. And that's where my piece of advice about look at the whole fringe benefits package, because you might be overlooking something that's very valuable where you can't really put a dollar amount on it. And in my case, the position was advertised at $68,000. And I was like, I'm going back 13 years salary wise. And when I got the contract, it was $73,000. So it was not a position that required a PhD really, or even a master's. So it wasn't like, oh, well, you see, you have a doctorate, so we're going to just give you $100,000. It doesn't work that way in corporate America. You have to look at the job posting. But I said, you know what? I just need to do something different. I will make it work. I will eat beans and rice. I will do whatever to get out, right? And I said, I think that there's opportunity for advancement. And so one of the perks for me is I have a manager who is the VP of Human Resources. And so I was in on the hiring process for him. There were 3 of us that met 3 half-hour, intervals, and said, well, if you're going to be my supervisor, here's what I want to know about you. And we all said, this man is amazing. He's really great. He brings, 30 years experience in HR. And after he got hired, one of our first conversations was, I need to make more money. Love what I do. And I've done a lot. And he's like, you absolutely have. And so he said, create a brag sheet and you list all of the things that you've done since you got here. And then I can take that information and I can advocate. And so after a year, he said, I think we can do this. And I said, and I want a title change because nobody knows what knowledge management associate is. And it doesn't really reflect the bulk of my job. And so he gave me the title of senior, which means that if I were to leave this company and go elsewhere, I already have that title of senior, and it wouldn't be any big thing for somebody else to consider me at a senior role. He said, what were you making teaching? And I said, 98,000. And he said, I'll see what we can do if we can come close. And they came back 95,000. So after a year, I got a $22,000 raise.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Teacher Career Transition Academy. Are you eager to explore new possibilities but find yourself unsure of where to start? Look no further than our Teacher Career Directory. Available for free, this comprehensive resource features over 200 careers tailored for transitioning teachers. Dive into detailed insights, including average U.S. salary ranges, occupational outlooks, and even a personalized skills and interests inventory. Download now at teachercareertransitionacademy.com/directory. I'll also drop the link in the show notes of this episode. So don't miss out and claim your free directory today at teachercareertransitionacademy.com/directory.
It's actually more money than what I would have been making teaching because I'm not buying things for the classroom students. I'm not commuting. I'm, at home most of the day. I'm not buying, spirit wear and sponsoring the kids, play and, the band trip and like all of these things. It's like an ATM. The kids see you and it's like, oh, you're my favorite teacher. Will you sponsor me?
That is inspiring. And I think, I love this story because one thing that I will always preach about is, don't ask yourself, can I take an X amount pay cut? Mm-hmm. Ask yourself, can I take it for a year? And if you can get through a year, there are so many opportunities for advancement, for even the same job title at a different company. And once you have that experience and you could just move up. I worked with a teacher. She was in the academy, got her first job in ed tech marketing. Within 9 months, doubled her salary at another ed tech company. I mean, it's crazy. Like that's the thing, like with teaching is that you know what you're going to make and you're going to move up. Maybe you don't move up a lot, but like, what it is, but literally the sky is the limit. And I have to think about myself. I started right out of college at the same company, like entry-level job, and I left. I was the CEO for 5 years. I mean, if that's not a story, literally anything you want, you have to stand up for yourself. You have to go after things, but it is there for you. Okay, let's see here. We had some really great questions. Let's see. Would you be willing to coach and help me with resume and LinkedIn? Okay, Danielle, I'll answer that question. I do help people resume, LinkedIn, the whole process. I'll answer that once we finish up with Taryn. I can tell you how to get help with that. Yes, very inspiring. I definitely agree. I love these stories. Taryn, is there anything else that you feel like you really wanted to share tonight that we did not get to cover?
Do you want me to drop the link in the chat to the presentation?
Yeah, so Taryn put together a presentation with links. So thank you for sharing that. Taryn, do you want to tell us a little bit about what is included in that?
Yeah, so basically I think back to 2 years ago, if I were in that same spot, what would I want help with? Like things that I could do immediately that would have an impact in getting noticed by recruiters, getting hired, in the networking, et cetera. And I know that some of you are already out for summer and it's like, I have time. What do I do now with that time to, make sure that I'm not going back to the classroom in August? So I'm dropping a link here if you want to open it. This is a presentation that I put together with some key tips, things like which hashtags to follow, which learning and development groups that I think are useful. I keep a big basket of books. So This is one that I just finished. And on Wednesdays, I do a one-pager where I do basically like, what are those key points from the book? And then people can read it if they want to or not. But I just finished 27 books. So again, if you want to connect on LinkedIn, you'll see some of the things that I've been doing. And it's part of a strategy because I told you one of our core competencies is synthesis. So what better way to show that you can synthesize a whole book of information into one page? So I'm working both sides, getting some learning and development people in my network. I'm introducing people to different books, maybe getting new connections that way as well. And then showing that I'm practicing the skills that I need in my job, but publicly on LinkedIn.
Awesome. That's amazing, and a great tip for kind of sharing like what you're doing live and active. And if and when an opportunity comes along that you want to try something else, or someone might find you, I know that's happened to me. Recruiters will just reach out because they're looking for a specific person. Actively posting and being active is such a great way to get that. So make sure you connect with Taryn on LinkedIn. Grab that link to her slides. Thank you so much. And okay, I'm going to do a last call for questions with Taryn, and then I will stay on and answer all the questions about getting help with LinkedIn, your resume. There were some other things in their career exploration. Taryn, thank you so much for your time tonight. I know we went maybe a little bit over, but your story was so inspiring. And I mean, as a learning and development professional, I guess I shouldn't be surprised at how succinct and amazing your delivery was. But what a fantastic session tonight. The audience is going wild. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, friends, that concludes another inspiring teacher career transition story. Whether you're left feeling certain that this career path is your next calling, or you can cross it off your list, I know you're walking away with valuable insights to take with you. If you want to access even more stories like these, there's an entire library of teacher career transition stories within the Teacher Career Transition Academy under the Career Exploration module of the program. If you're interested in learning more about the Academy, I'll drop a link in the show notes. And don't forget to check out our podcast channel for other great advice from our coaches and experts. Until next time, remember, friends, the journey is just the beginning. Embrace the adventure.